and understanding what's being what I'm reading, and written production would be writing and producing language. And there's all kinds of different levels and all kinds of different elements that are part of it. And interaction also goes spoken and written, different levels, and for all kinds of different purposes. And a big part of the new curriculum deals with the idea that we learn language, or we use language in different domains, not the domains that we had in the old curriculum, but domains that are like personal domains, family, educational domains, academic domains, like work. So we have different purposes for the different languages, or for the different uses of our language. And then we have to learn how to use language in the different situations that we might be in. So that's like the very, 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 very broad overview of this curriculum. The main focuses of this new curriculum also came along with a very long list of words that we have to make sure, the bands. So we have a pre-band list for grade 3 or anything before grade 4. The kids have to know how to read and understand and use these words. There has to be productive use of these words, and have to be able to read and write them. And they all work on the phonics. So it's like a lead up to phonics. Then there's band 1, there's band 2, and there's band 3. So we have lots and lots of words. And these are things, the ideas that the kids learn, our students come out of high school at a very rich level of vocabulary knowledge. And the CFR is divided into different levels from A1 to C2, where A1 is the lowest level, C2 is the highest level. And what we expect our students to be able to do, because the CFR is divided into different levels. So if we look at, let's say, a kid who's finishing grade 6, we want him to be at what we would call an A1 level. He's able to do, and there's a whole list of things that can do. He can do da 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 da. All of this is parallel to the CFR, and then we move on. So we expect our kids in grade 9, for example, to be at an A2 level. We expect our 4-pointers to be at a B1 level, and our 5-pointers to be at a B2 level. But we expect our 3-pointers to be at an A2 level. So there's a big difference in the levels that we expect, and they're a lot more realistic than they used to be in the past, because if the old curriculum kind of took us to, this is the highest level and everyone was striving to reach that. Now we're going to be a little more realistic. We know our 3-pointers are never going to reach the high end of the levels, but we're very happy if they reach this level. And then the idea behind it is, if you finished high school as a 4-point student and you did well, you passed with, let's say, 70 and up, we can say that you're at a B1 level. And then if you go to Europe to go and study, and you want to apply to a school and they ask you your level of English, you as a graduate, you would be at this and this level. So we're looking for the parallels to enable that to be working accordingly. And the word list is parallel also to various word lists around the world, which enable us to understand more or less which words and which vocabulary words, what is the background, what is the foundation that these students actually have. Mamash in a nutshell. I have a whole presentation on this for how, talking about the curriculum. And as Fatima said, there were entire Hashtalmut just for the curriculum, because it is very different way of looking at things. And just the division of how everything works inside. We'll look at a few little things here, but because I didn't think to go into the curriculum. But if you have any questions, I will gladly go open up my curriculum and show you what it looks like. I can show you where it is on the website, give you an idea if you're not sure where it is and what's going on there. It is really, really a good idea to sit and look at it, understand what the can-do statements are talking about, understand what is expected of our students. It's a different way of approaching, if you want, what we're doing as teachers in the classrooms. And it gives us a slightly different focus than what we used to have in the past. So if you guys haven't been met, if you have any questions, just let me know. And if anything I'm saying here doesn't make sense because I'm basing it on you knowing what I'm talking about, if there's something you don't know, just ask and I will gladly explain it. Besado? We're good?
Yes.
Okay, yofi. So when I talk about making the transition from receptive to productive, so we're back to the presentation a sec. Making one of the things we want is when our students are able to make the transition from receptive knowledge to productive knowledge, okay? We want them to understand vocabulary and then be able to produce it, to use it. And the first level of use is always going to be an oral level. We always want them to be able to use the vocabulary they know in speaking. We don't only want writing, because at the end of the day, what we want our students to be able to communicate orally, and that will enable them to do lots of other things, in travel and study and whatever they want to do, but they have to be able to speak. So one of the things we want to work on is being able to produce the vocabulary and the language. This is very closely related to the one we were talking about before. They have to use the language for meaningful communication. There has to be some, when we talk about communication, we're normally talking about spoken language. We do, yes, we communicate like with WhatsApp and with chats and whatever. So you also want that, of course, but you definitely want them to also be able to speak. And one of the things we need to do is to include lots and lots of speaking activities into whatever we're doing in class. It should be something, but if they have to be meaningful. For example, having the kids read their answers out loud after having done, let's say, reading comprehension is not speaking, but having them speak to each other about the story and deciding something together would be speaking. So we're talking about using it meaningfully. It can't be something that's rote or something that's just, drilling a sound or reading together chorally, which we also do. I mean, I'm not saying don't do it, but that's not speaking, okay? That's playing around with the sounds and teaching my muscle. It's a muscle memory technique for me to be able to learn how to pronounce different things, but that's not speaking in the sense of free speech. And what we want is we want our students to be able to speak freely. So we have to scaffold it and build it up and eventually get to meaningful communication freely. That's the idea. We're good so far?
Yeah, we're good.
Okay. We also want, they have to understand the usefulness of what they're learning. This is one of the principles. They have to see how what they're doing now in class will be a useful tool for them or a useful language ability for them later on. How do I take what I did in class and use it at home? How do I take what I did in class and speak to my friends on, who live in the States? How do I speak to my grandmother who came in from England now, who doesn't speak any Hebrew or any Arabic, and we want to speak to them? So how does what I'm doing in class relate to real life? Basically, that's the idea. And it's something that we've been talking. I remember talking about this in the 90s, in the 1990s. So it's not that it's a new concept. It's just one that we tend to forget. We tend to forget that language is a real live, kicking and breathing, and we definitely want to keep it alive and breathing and very, very useful. And the last principle that I took out of the principles here is learning is facilitated when they collaborate with each other, when they work together on something, lots of pair work, lots of group work, lots of opportunities for them to actually talk to each other and to negotiate for meaning and to try to understand each other and to share their ideas. That's the whole idea. I know most of you are thinking, yeah, then they end up speaking in Hebrew or in Arabic and it's useless. Nachon, that happens a lot, and we all do. And I see that at the college also. If I put them in groups, they all switch automatically to, Hebrew, the Russian, the Arabic, whatever they happen to be sitting together. But it's your job. It's, you have to find creative ways to encourage them to speak more English. There's all kinds of ideas on how to make sure they speak English amongst themselves, including, getting points for speaking English, collecting points over a certain period of time, every time this group works together, and then getting some kind of a certificate and extra like brownie points for the kids. Like, find a creative way to encourage the use of English. I can tell you what doesn't work. It doesn't work to tell them you should do this because you're going to need it when you get older. That's not, no, okay? Our 10-year-olds don't care. Our 17-year-olds don't care. So we definitely don't want to do that. You want to make it something that for the here and now, very motivating in class for me to really, really want to use English in my group work. So these are the main principles that I took out that I felt deal with speaking in some way, definitely with communication. They're very, very important that we have to kind of pay attention to these things. You probably do most of this anyways in your class, but once you focus on it and you're aware of it, suddenly you realize, oh, this could be working. I could do it this way, and it becomes a little bit better. That's that's just highlighting things right now. Are there any questions about this particular slide? And another element.
I want to ask something.
Yes, Ravita.
It will be in the model.
It will be sent to Caroline.
Okay. Caroline will ask it. I need to ask Caroline. I do not understand.
Miri will share it with me, and I'll share it with the group.
Okay, thank you.
I'll place it in the classroom, or I'll email it to everyone. No problem.
Okay, thank you.
Another one of the elements that we have in this curriculum is that the young learner, we're talking about the very beginnings of language acquisition, grade 1, 2, 3, if you want, even kindergarten, are actually related to some extent in the curriculum. And we did have this in the old curriculum as a separate little booklet, if you guys remember. We had this thing for pre-foundation, they called it. So this is now called pre-basic user, because the basic users are elementary school 4, 5, 6, grade 4, 5, 6. But if you look at what the oral foundation means, the oral beginning, this is something that we should be doing anyways, especially in the beginning. But if I think about our students in school right now, and we think about, let's say, our grade 9 Batsa Gimel, who don't know how to say anything, they may as well be beginners. So if you focused on spoken language, they would have a lot more of a foundation to build up on. And we have a lot of these students, all our 3-pointers in high school, all our Batsa Bet are, they need their foundation I'm not saying it's not solid, it's almost non-existent. So the only way to build a solid foundation for language to be able to then develop is to build an oral foundation. You have to develop the oral skills. And the basic oral skills are first knowing how to speak before you actually read and write. This is based on first language acquisition. First language acquisition, think about it, we acquire our speaking ability for the first 4 or 5 years of our lives, and only then we start reading. And no, we're not going to wait 4 or 5 years for the kids to acquire a second language, because they already have a language. But we do want to give them a little bit of time to acquire the sounds, the language, the understanding. And then when they actually get to the reading, they're reading something that they're already familiar with, because it's language that they already have. So we definitely want to have a basic a good oral foundation before the reading and writing. Lots of work on listening comprehension and speaking skills, lots of repetitions. Repetitions help, lots of repetition, not in the sense that, okay, everyone say it 4 times. The repetition in that I say it once here, it comes back in this lesson, it comes back in that lesson, in the same lesson, we'll play around with it 3 or 4 times. That's repetition. That's what I mean by repetition, not in them saying the word 6 times. My students, for example, my students would always tell them the kids have to repeat the word. So let's say they'll show a cow, and they'll say, okay, cow, and then cow, 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 cow. Yofi gamalti, I said 6. I'm moving on to the next word. That's not repetition, okay? That's just you repeating it 6 times, but that's not what you want. Lots and lots of rhymes and chants and simple dialogues. These things help them understand the melody of the language. They help them understand the sounds of the language. They help them understand the intonation of the language, and then it's easy for them to be able to carry on a conversation because they know where to go up, they know where to go down, they know how to ask things, they know where to put the stress of different things. They also know how to pronounce certain words in the right intonation, because certain words, if you change the intonation, it might be a completely different word, or it just sounds really, really weird. So you want to make sure they're getting that. And you're also looking at the different sound combinations. If I can hear the sound combinations, if I can hear the sounds of the language, then I'm going to be a much better speaker because I'll be pronouncing it more clearly. I'm going to be a much better reader because when I read, I'll understand what I'm reading. And I'll also be a much better writer because I'll be able to spell things based on hearing properly. And the younger they are, the easier it is for them to hear the different sounds of the language. So you put a lot of emphasis on the different sounds and how to play around with them. So one of the the basic beginnings, if you want, or if even for our fall starters where we want to give them a new start, is here with this whole issue of creating that oral foundation. Any questions about this? I love the coffee thing that Aviv mixes. Okay, so we're looking at the can-do statements. So I'm looking at production, talking only about speaking in this case. So we have spoken production activities. So these are some of the things that come straight out of the curriculum that we want our students to be able to do. At the end of the day, we want the students can say, I can describe an experience. I can give information to other people. I can put my ideas forward and bring my cause forward. I can argue an argument in order to win a debate, for example. I can make a public announcement. I can come in and notify people about different things. I can stand up in front of an audience and give a speech. These are all things that as an individual, I am able to do. These are all production activities, which means in order to be able to describe an experience, I've had the scaffolding as I'm going along, learning the vocabulary, learning the structures, learning and using the different activity, the different expressions that go with it, using the different information that would lead up to it, and then constantly building on it. The scaffolding is what's going to get me eventually able to do what I want, what we want our students to do. So we have the spoken production activities, and then we have the spoken interaction activities. The interaction are the ones that we want to do with somebody else. So first of all, we want to be able to understand the person we're speaking to. We want to have a conversation. We want to have both formal and informal discussions. If I'm having a debate, it's a formal discussion of a sort. If we're trying to persuade each other, could be a formal discussion about something. Informal could simply be, so what did you do yesterday? Do you want to go to see a movie, whatever? That could be an informal one. It could be something very, very focused, like goal-oriented cooperation, which there's some of the examples that they gave in the curriculum, talking about something, expressing an opinion about something, discussing it, making a plan of some sort, obtaining goods and services, putting on, little skits where they're going shopping or not going, or going to the restaurant. We do this a lot in elementary school. They're at a restaurant and they're buying things. It could be talking on the phone. in order to make a reservation for something, which is super, super hard for most of our students. For most people in general, when they don't know the language, talking on the phone is probably the hardest thing there is to do. So that's definitely one, making an appointment with the doctor, booking a hotel room, anything, getting information, some kind of an information exchange where I have to get information and give information. Being interviewed, definitely part of our work domain, something that our students, especially in high school, are going to eventually go into interviews. Maybe they want to do summer camp somewhere, they have to go through an interview, something they need to learn how to do. And if you guys watched, there was a news item a couple of months ago about how our Israeli students, Israeli graduates don't know enough English to get into high tech. This is an opportunity to help them pass that interview. At least the initial, being able to talk about yourself and what you've studied and what you know how to do and why I should be hired. Very big, very, very important. Using all the different kinds of telecommunications that we have, the oral ones, using all the different tools that we've got, being able to record yourself and present something, being able to converse in an online situation, being able to send a voice message or receive and send voice messages, and written ones, of course, as well. We definitely want, as you can see, there's a lot of spoken interaction. Most of our speaking is interaction. Very few of us walk around talking out loud to ourselves. There's nothing wrong with it. Don't get me wrong. It's considered very, very normal, but it's not normal. It's not something we usually do. So we want more of the interaction, and therefore there's so many more, as you can see, as compared to very, very few in the other charts. This is the curriculum. I picked like the highlights of the curriculum. Up till here, we're all good. Are there any questions? Anything you want to ask, say, share? Always this quiet, Caroline?
Yeah, I mean, so the only thing I would deduce from all of this is that from all the teachers I speak to, I think a lot of teachers have ideas and would love to do this, but they just have limited time. And because they're restricted to teaching something so specific in the curriculum, the time that they do have, they just don't have the scope to be creative in this way. So if you have any way to kind of tackle that, or give advice on what you think the most sort of fundamental parts are based on that lack of time, that would also be really helpful. Because I think the ideas are great, but the more teachers I speak to, the more I hear, I don't have time. I have to do it this way because of the curriculum. I'd love to, but I don't have the resources.
There's a big difference between not having the resources and not having the time, okay? They're not the same. And time is something that you learn how to play around with and plan accordingly.
Right.
It's a matter of planning your lessons in a way that enables you to, yes, include a little more speaking into it. But you are, I'll give you lots of ideas for activities that you might do already and not even realize that these would actually be considered speaking.
I have an idea, if you don't mind, Miri.
Leila, Ravi has his hand up, so after him, gladly.
Okay. Okay, I was thinking about, I work in junior high, and we usually have book reports. I was thinking of having a creative assignment, and then the kids can describe their assignment. So they are going to speak, they are going to explain, and they can also recommend why the other kids should read the book they've read, or they shouldn't read the book they've read. So in a way, it's practical because they are describing what they've done and they are speaking.
Absolutely. As long as they're speaking and they're not reading off their page, Leila, I mean, that's the idea. The idea would be that they're actually speaking. And honestly, you see, that's the kind of thing, for example, that takes a very long time. Okay, that takes an entire lesson or 2 lessons for everyone to present, and nobody listens to each other, and it's very problematic as far as that goes. And that's one of the reasons people don't do it, because it's tedious at the end of the day.
Yeah, but if
I
you,
have
for
40
example,
kids.
sorry,
Huh?
sorry, if for example, you have, you can have a kind of, I don't know, you can ask if there are volunteers to describe what they've done, and the other kids can record their description. Even though if they record their description, maybe they will be reading it and not speaking, but at least they will be saying the language, saying the words.
Again, there's a big difference between reading and speaking. And when
Yeah.
you see it in the recording, you see if they're reading or speaking. But
Yeah.
what you could do, you can have them use things like Flipgrid, where they have to record themselves talking and presenting, and you see if they're reading or not, because it's a video. And then they can listen to each other's and comment. I mean, there are enough technical tools today to be able to do that easily. And they're very simple and they're free. So it's definitely something that there's no reason to say I don't have the resources. And time-wise, it would be something they could do at home, and then the kids would have to listen to each other's at home, listen to at least 3 other people and comment orally as well. And then it's really nice because everyone's listening, and everyone records, everyone listens, and everyone gives back a comment orally, and then you've got a whole oral discussion around the book reports, which could be a really, really nice tool. And then you're avoiding that whole thing of who wants to stand up in front of the class and talk, and everyone is rolling their eyes while he's standing, the poor guy in front of the whole class, and nobody's really listening. So that's a really nice way. Technology has enabled us to do things in a really nice way, and get in and integrate speaking a lot more easily that way. And it helps prepare them for, the oral bagut that is also online, and they have to record themselves. It's a nice scaffolding towards. So definitely.
And Raviv, you've got a question. You have to come off.
Raviv, go ahead.
Hi, thank you. And thank you, Miri, for joining us today.
Pleasure.
I teach at the high school level, and this is something I've discussed with Carolyn in email correspondence. I've also made a number of comments to the different lessons we've been exposed to as part of the Hashtalmut. I've been teaching high school now for about 10 years, and my experience is that the curriculum, and I must confess, I'm not all that familiar with the curriculum. It changes anyway every few years. The ministry seems very capricious in its approach to English instruction. So I don't ever take very seriously any new curriculum that they come out with. But the structure of the Bagut exams, which in my mind is the most potent expression of where the ministry's priorities are with respect to any subject, English included, is that there is almost no emphasis or value whatsoever placed on spoken English. There's an obsessive focus on reading comprehension. Whatever little speaking was ever tested as part of the Bagut regimen has now been relegated to speaking in front of a computer. So whatever, with the tiny bit of spoken English that was ever evaluated as part of a high school student's English preparation or English acquisition, whatever little bit was conversational is now not conversational at all. It's not they don't even call it, by the way, spoken English. They call it oral language production, I think it's called. Right, which is interesting because I very much identify with what you've spoken about until now, but that's not my experience with the ministry or with the English inspectorate. Quite the opposite. That's part of the reason that I joined this Hashtalmut, is because I was hoping that we will all move more and more in the direction of spoken conversational English. But as of February 2022, that is not at all what's happening.
First of all, the big change in the Bagut, and we're talking about COBE, the COBE exam. The change came into play because the way the old Bagut, or the old oral Bagut, was being tested or was being run didn't reflect realistic knowledge that the students had of the language, or the realistic ability of spoken English. And while it's not a 90% element of the Bagut at all, it is definitely something that is has a lot more focus than it used to have. We're slowly transitioning to make the COBE the listening comprehension element, so that they have to listen, which is, hold on a second. We're transitioning to make the COBE so that it's listening comprehension and not just the way it was, so that then the written Bagut will also have an emphasis on vocabulary. So that transition is coming in. The idea is really that we want to see their ability to listen to something, or it's not interactive in the sense that it's a conversation. They can't converse with the computer, but they can answer questions to show understanding of what was asked of me and how do I respond to that, which is something that was less done when you're sitting in front of a tester. I don't know what your personal experience was, but my experience in the high school level and with many of our colleagues and other people who taught in high school, basically what happened was the teachers would decide, it was always a swap. I'd go to Raviv's school, Raviv would come to mine, and we're friends. You say, be nice to my kids, and I'll be nice to your kids. I'll give everyone 95 and up. He'll do the same, and everybody's happy. And the one or two who was really bad will get a 90. And then we had 4-pointers who were getting 95s or 90s, and they could barely put 2 sentences together. So we were looking for a way to kind of eliminate, if you want, that subjective personal grading system and make it something a little bit more objective, using a more analytic rubric, first of all, and having outside markers listen and check based on what they're hearing and not based on personal communication in front of the child. And
May I respond to that?
Let me finish, and then definitely. And then the conversational English was supposed to be part of the classroom situation, where the teacher makes sure that the kids are doing more speaking. And now what happened was that as Bagut always ends up trickling its way down, so that this element of having more spoken and it's computerized, and the teachers had less control, if you want, or it was less structured than it used to be. And then the teacher couldn't just focus for 1 month on the oral Bagut. And we've all done this. Anyone who's taught in high school 10, 15 years ago remembers that we had either cue cards or we had these list of questions, and we would teach the kids, they know them off by heart, and this is what's going to happen. And we'd all do this for a month of marathon teaching, and then everything. And there was no conversation before. So now, as a result of this, the way the teacher feels there's a little bit less absolute control than there used to be. There's a little more speaking going on in class. I'm not saying it's 100% amazing, but it is much, much better than it used to be. And because of the trickle down effect, the washback, we're getting more and more speaking in lots and lots of other grade levels, which we didn't have before. So there is an influence on it. There is probably lots of room for improvement, better at the level of using a more interactive program. It's a work in progress. Let's put it that way. Yes, Ravi, what did you want to respond?
Yeah, I don't mean to sound too negative or too critical, but because I still in some ways view myself as an outsider. I've been teaching for 10 years. I still consider myself something of a new teacher. And I never studied in the Israeli educational system. So in that sense, I'm still somewhat of an outsider. But my impression early on was that this whole notion of what do they call it? Halufit, the 30%.
The alternative assessment?
Yeah, is essentially, if we look at it kind of soberly and honestly, it's an expression of no confidence on the part of the ministry in our students. they can't really be expected to pass the written standardized Bagut exams. So we'll create this kind of artificial cushion, which allows them to get higher grades so that when they fail the Bagut exams or get low Bagut scores, it'll somehow average out to a passing score. That's,
So you're
in my
talking
mind,
about, no, Aviv, you're not talking about הערכה חלופית, you're talking about them again.
no, I'm talking about 30%, which is, in most cases, at least in my experience, the literature program.
That's a whole different issue.
All right, but I'm using an example to discuss what you were, or to comment on what you were saying. That, in my mind, is because the literature program, in my own experience and the experience of many of my colleagues who I speak with, is very little about English. It's very little about learning. It's just turning kids into kind of clerks or pencil pushers so they can get a high grade and offset the low grades they get on the Bagut exams. So that's kind of an expression of no confidence in our students. The changes you described just now, in my mind at least, seem to be a kind of a vote of no confidence in the teachers in the system. Because even if spoken English was very, very undervalued until 2 years ago, at least all Israeli high school students had to sit opposite an English speaker, or at least someone who knew English well, and converse. What you basically said, or at least the way I interpreted what you said, is that the ministry came to the conclusion that it can't rely on either the English abilities of the testers or on the integrity or honesty of those testers, because everyone is kind of kol echad doeg lasheni, and the real language ability of students is not really being tested. And so the result is there's no more conversational English whatsoever. Kids are being tested in front of computers, but at least we don't have to rely on the human element in the ministry, that is the teachers, because we know they're not up to the task. That's how I interpret what you said, and you probably won't agree with me, but I think that conclusion is kind of inescapable.
It's not that they don't rely on them. It was a matter of eliminating subjectivity in such a high stakes exam. And the minute something is dependent on the subjectivity of the person, the tester, then you're also setting up your students to get a grade that is not a realistic grade for what they're able to do. Because if I'm sitting in front of, I'll give you the best example. A few years ago, before COPE started, one of my graduates was testing in the school opposite the one. They have two schools very close vicinity, and they swapped. The teacher who had come to test her students was in a very bad mood. She had a big fight with somebody in her team and took out all her bemet. Everyone in the whole class got 70 without no rhyme or reason. The whole class got 70. And when my graduate went to find out what happened, why did they get all 70? There, some of them are excellent. Some of them really did deserve a 70, but some of them did not deserve a 70. They should have gotten a much higher grade. She said, no, your class is terrible. I don't want to talk to anybody. And that was the end of it. So this subjective element, the whole point of COPE was to eliminate the subjective assessment of the students. What we're trying to do is find a more objective way to assess students, especially in a high stakes test. You want to make sure that whoever is listening to the students speak is not including and is not basing the grade on a feeling, because if the kid is sitting in front of you and he starts sweating, I remember testing kids and they get all very nervous, and then they start stuttering and they get really stuck, and then you're kind of prompting them, almost feeding them, and then they repeat what you said. You say, wonderful, and you suddenly give them a 95 because they were able to repeat what you said, and because you basically feel sorry for them. The kid is super stressed out. The kid is sitting in front of you, and all he can do is go, and you can't possibly give him a 70, which is what he deserves. So you're automatically giving him a high grade. And that's a subjective a subjective assessment of a child's ability, not based on a very objective and analytic rubric. So we're changing that element by doing it this way. Right now, we're working with what we've got. This is what the ministry has paid for. This is what the ministry has agreed to for now. We're always looking for something a little more interactive, and there are lots of programs. Just, things are a lot of them are either in pilot stages or they're extremely expensive. And if you want a nationwide exam to do certain things just can't work in a way where the avatar will talk to you, because these are, so we're waiting, we're working on this, we're constantly changing it, trying to make it a little bit better and a little bit more realistic, in the sense that if we're sitting you're talking to one of these animated machines on your phone, you end up talking like you would on the Bagud. If you're looking, you went to a website and you have to record your answers, you're doing exactly the same thing. You're talking to any of these other avatars on any of the programs, you're actually recording, and you're recording yourself sending in voice messages to different things. So we're working on that. We might not be working on the conversation where he asks you, how are you? I'm fine, thank you. And how, we don't get that, but we do get a lot of other language abilities, which you could never see in the oral Bagud the way it was before, simply because of that subjective element and the fact that, yes, and malasot, some of the teachers cut corners, some of the teachers gave very emotional grades, and others were very nasty. And because they didn't like the other, for whatever reasons, we never really knew. But what we can tell you is our last set of grades showed a much more realistic view of what our 4-pointers are able to do with the language and what our 5-pointers are able to do with the language, which we never saw before. So we definitely know that there is a change in what is happening. And if the teachers want their 4-pointers to actually be 95 on the exam, they're going to have to work with them on more than just practicing answering the questions on the oral, on the examples of the oral Bagud, but to actually work on conversation English, because a big part of it is actually conversation. If Alfie asks them, can you tell me about your hometown, what do you like the best? That's part of a conversation, and he has to be able to answer it. And if he doesn't know how to answer it without going into a monologue like he remembered for his project in the past, then, and he can't answer it without memorizing something, and he does not know how to speak. The whole point behind COBE is that the kids are answering questions that are posed to them, and they're understanding what is asked of them, and then they have to answer according to what was asked and not to something that they memorized. Coming in and knowing that the teacher is in front of me is going to ask me, so how old are you? What are you planning to do after high school? What do you want to do in the army? Where do you want to travel? And now tell me about your project. And the kid goes for 3 minutes, and then he says, okay, so why did you enjoy doing it? Yes. Oh, wonderful, good, so you got 100. That's not knowing English. That means I memorized something and I came in and spit it out, and the minute I walked out the testing room, I forgot everything I said, because then when he does go to Europe, or he does go to Thailand, or he does go to South America, he can't for the life of him put together 3 sentences that actually make sense. What we're hoping for now, and we're seeing a huge change in it, is that the kids are actually listening to what is being asked and answering what was being asked, and they're getting penalized for not answering what was being asked. If they're coming in and answering things that are not mentioned, then, or not asked of them, they don't get graded for it. And because there's no one saying, oh, misken, because it doesn't work that way. So the computerized nachon, it's not 100% conversation. It's not glorious, but it is a much, much better option than we had before. And the most important thing is speaking became a focal point, and it's trickling all the way down into elementary school. And people are talking, people are recording, people are doing all kinds of things. And Layla's idea of doing the recordings and the book reports orally, that's something that we would have probably never thought of if we hadn't brought up the code, because we would have known you only speak in high school for that 1 month when there's just before the oral Bagud. And that's not what we want. We want to change things. And one of the, Caroline's dying to say something. I'm gonna, just give me another minute. One of the nice things about Speak to Go, if we're already here, is that it enables that conversation with that interaction with the computer, giving the kids another tool to actually be able to interact with something that's not a person. And that's something we're all doing. You know, you call up help somewhere on you know, I call up for, I don't remember what it was I was looking for, to get help with something in the US. And so what do you want? Tell me who you are. Who do you want to talk to? And everything is a voice thing. No press number 1 for what you want. You have to tell them what you want. And if I can't do that, then I can't speak to anybody. I can't get any help anywhere. So this is exactly what we're working for. Working into today's world, is this. This is what it is. It's all technologically based. And that includes going to the bank and includes everything, and or making an appointment to go to the post office to pick up a package. Everything is computerized. I don't see a problem with it. I really don't. It's not conversation, but it is and the conversation has to be part of the lesson. It can't be, it doesn't have to be, it doesn't have to be tested. Yes, Caroline, sorry.
I actually I'm watching the time, so I apologize. And I wanted to try and bring us back on track. So one of the things that we really would love you to do, Miri, is to talk about how, when creating a lesson, you answer all of these points that you've mentioned to us. So you clearly are very aware of Speak to Go and how it works. But can you now just sort of talk to us about, everybody here is going to write lessons, and they're going to take those, we're going to build those Speak to Go lessons for them, and they're going to take them into the classroom and get their students to do them. So can you just bring us back on track? I apologize, Raviv, and if you want to go through anything afterwards, I'm sure Miri's very happy to do that as well. But can we now just come back on track and talk about the lessons? How are we going to write lessons that, you know, for Raviv, there's a skill there that he's looking to build. For other teachers, there are other skills. Can you bring us back on track and help us and guide us when it comes to actually writing lessons?
Sure, absolutely. First of all, if we take a look at, just think of your lesson, your regular lesson. What are you going to do? You want to include a little bit of everything in your lesson. So what you want to do is you're going to think, how do I incorporate a speaking activity of some sort into my lessons? There has to be something that will enable the students to speak. Now, there can be classroom discussions, but when we do a classroom discussion, it has to be such that everyone gets a chance to speak. And that's really hard to do when you have 35 kids in the class. It's hard to do when you have 10 kids in the class. When you have 35 kids, it's even harder. So you have to think of other ways of getting this done. So I made a whole list of things that could be interesting to do. That we can look at and we talk about, and where I would put them in. So if there's a whole class discussion or activity, then it has to be one of these things, for example, where you have, like the talking stick, where everyone, if you want to talk, you have to hold a stick, or you have to always relate to what the other person said. So there's listening there as well. If pair word, group work, we talked about, it's always good. For the little ones, pattern practice with the ball. You throw the ball, you ask a question, the kid has to respond. And the pattern practice, for example, is something that's really nice on Speak to Go. You've got a lot of practice on that, because they ask questions and the kids have to answer the questions. And so you can do a lot of practice there as well. So it could be, you start off with the ball and then you send them off to work on the Speak to Go for 10 minutes, and then they come back. And so it's kind of nice. I've been playing around with Speak to Go to get an idea of what TED Talks and presentations are always wonderful. The idea would always be to get them to record themselves and put on a presentation. That's where things like, Caroline, I'm not sure if there is an option to do something like a Flipgrid recording on Speak to Go. I did not find something like that.
It would be a really interesting option actually for the older students. I'll note it down. I'll talk to Kfir. It's a great idea.
Because that would be really nice, especially in the higher grades. They've had a whole topic, which some of the topics are really nice, and then they can give a talk, their point of view of something, and that would be a recording of that. And then they can see each other and they can listen to each other and they can comment back. Just that whole commenting back and forth. It would be like, giving voice messages back and forth, but these kids live on things like TikTok, where they're recording themselves and talking. They're doing, and there's so many apps out there that we could be using. And if these elements are part of, if you take something like, there's an app called Chatterpix. I don't know if you've ever seen it.
With you can get the American presidents and so you can get characters talking to you.
Yeah, exactly. You put a picture and that picture does the talking. You're talking, but the picture is Kilu talking. So like if they were practicing something, like Where I Live, for example, which is the demo that I was looking at earlier. So they're talking about where I live, and then there's a picture of a cow, and the kid is talking about where he lives, but the cow is telling it. And they have to say where the cow lives, or where the dog lives, or where, I don't know, the fly lives. They're giving them an opportunity to do this. So it's like it would be a build up through something they're working on in Speak to Go, because there's all the vocabulary and all the work there, the structure of the language, and then the evaluation at the very end could be on something like Chatterpix, which could be really, really cute. Unless, again, you guys come up with something cool to put onto Speak to Go, then you don't need the Chatterpix, but that would be the idea. Role plays are amazing to do in class, and you're working on literature. Do in high school. Okay, I mean, I've taught high school, and I remember doing the literature. We did the literature bagut at the time, but we're talking about you're doing a play, you're doing a story. Let them rewrite the story into a play and then put it on, or put on a piece of it. They're doing book reports, Layla. They have to act out their favorite scene from the story and explain why. These are all role plays, and it's all oral. And it's not that they're reading off of a piece of paper that you wrote. It's something that they have to put together, and then they have to remember it. And they don't always remember it word for word, so that they have to ad lib as they go along. Role plays are a wonderful tool. It's a buildup of something as we're going along, but it has to be scaffolded. It has to always be, we're always teaching it slowly, a little piece. This is how we would say this, and now we're going to build on to the next level, and then on to the next level. You're constantly building up until you get to whatever your final point is. All kinds of games and walkabouts and just about anything you could possibly do in your lesson. The idea would always be, you have your set routine, right? So you would come in and, greetings, good morning, whatever. You start off, I personally always like to start off my lessons with a vocabulary activity. It's always an oral vocabulary activity where you're talking, you're checking it's in some kind of vocabulary game. They take 2 or 3 minutes. I have a really nice PowerPoint, Caroline, if you want, that I put together with a ton of vocabulary activities. I'll gladly give it to you. So there's a whole bunch. You play 2 or 3 minutes. A lot of them could be oral, some kind of where they have to describe, they have to act out, they have to do all sorts of different things. Wonderful vocabulary review. Oral, it's an oral activity. They're speaking, they're discussing, they're describing, they're guessing. So you've already got an oral activity, and it doesn't take more than 2 or 3 minutes. You can do it in small groups, and then everyone's participating. You can do it with a whole class, and then you have to make sure that every lesson someone else is actually participating, so that it's always, it's not always the same people. And then you go into your lesson from there. Now, if you're doing reading comprehension, first have a discussion about the topic, the introduction to whatever. It's a whole class discussion. Make sure you're monitoring it. So this time, this guy answers when he says something, he relates to what the other one said before. You're getting more speaking in. You talk about the reading, then they do the questions. Afterwards, have them express an opinion about it. Put them into pairs and compare their opinions on it. Always find a reason for the kids to talk to each other about whatever it is they were just doing. Now, if you can take what they've been doing and turn it into a speaking activity, and just about everything can be turned into a speaking activity, then you're giving them that opportunity to speak. And it could be even if they've been working on a unit in Speak to Go, for example, and then they've practiced and they got all this, all the scaffolding through the program, then you bring them back into pairs or groups, and they have to then describe their experience. They have to then describe their opinion about it. They have to then do something with what they learned in the unit that they've all been working on. So it's easy enough to always take what you're doing, what you're normally doing in class. I'm not saying you have to rewrite your entire lesson plan, but take what you're doing in class and to add spoken elements, spoken activities based on whatever it is you've been working on in class. There has to be a way to constantly add speaking into your lessons. That means they're not allowed asking you questions in Hebrew. They're not allowed answering you in Hebrew. You're not speaking to them in Hebrew. And if they don't understand, or if they say, and then you say, okay, let's see what you do know. And then you start pulling it out of them. It's like pulling teeth, but it takes 2 or 3 months. And then the speaking just becomes more natural part of the lesson. You have to actually believe that you're able to do this. And that's our biggest problem, honestly, is the teachers. Our teachers don't believe, and I hear this over and over again, that if we speak only English in class, the kids are going to understand this. And that's based on the fact that when you come in September and you speak only English, they all look at you and say, ma, 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 ma. And then you just keep going at it. And then you can use what we call the sandwiching technique. You all know what I'm talking about by sandwiching? You do English, Hebrew, or Arabic, and then English. So you'd say, in the beginnings, it's, open your books, lift off the sefer, open your books. And then eventually just open your books because you've said it enough times, they don't need it. So you kind of have a sandwich. It's like 2 pieces of bread. I always say 2 pieces of bread and pastrami in the middle. Now, pastrami is not good for you. So you want to get rid of it eventually, right? The pastrami is the Hebrew or the Arabic. So you want to get rid of that eventually and work only on the English. Think about how many things you say in a lesson that you say all the time. Why should those ever be in Hebrew or Arabic? Why in heaven's name would you say any of the regular everyday things in Hebrew or Arabic when they should know them already? And everything else that you want to explain, the highlights, the most important parts, you'll translate and go back and repeat them so that they're hearing English, getting a translation, and then English. And then eventually you drop the translation because you're constantly repeating yourself. That's the sandwiching technique. And then over a period of 3 months of doing that, of speaking only English, by the time you're in your 4th month, they'll understand everything you're saying. And we've seen this happening with our 3-point classes where the teacher persevered, with our 4-point classes that are weak and the teachers persevered. I'm talking about high school kids. That means if I've got a 3-point class in grade 10 or 11, who was absolutely positive that they don't know anything, and then the teacher came in and spoke only in English, and they thought, oh my God, I really don't know anything. After 3 months, we suddenly hear them speaking and they're super proud of themselves. And that's what we want. We want the kids to feel that they are able to. By constantly saying, we have to help them, we're not helping by translating. We're helping by giving them more English. You're going to do a song and a dance and you're going to explain it in 100 different ways and you're going to constantly explain it and give them more and more and more and more and more. And eventually it happens. All of a sudden they go, oh, I got that one. And that's what we want. And the more they listen, the more they get, the more exposure, the more English they get, the more likely they are to understand. And then they're able to use it because they're kind of soaking it in. And every time they soaked in something, you're going to give them an opportunity to try it out. And then they soak it in and then another opportunity to try it out. So what you want is lots of opportunities to learn something new and to try to say it. Lots of opportunities to learn something new and to then practice it in some way. And the more I do that, all in English, of course, the better off they are. One of the, Caroline, for example, one of the things I did not like in your demo lesson was the Quizlet where the words were translated. There's no reason for translation. Somehow or other, English could be explained in English or with pictures.
Well, I'll tell you what we found when we initially worked with students, and this would be interesting for the teachers as well. We found that if they have to pronounce an English word and they don't understand it in their mother tongue, they just have this difficulty. They don't hear the music, they don't show understanding when they pronounce the word. But if the word is explained to them before, like you've said with your PowerPoint, a way of introducing vocabulary at the beginning of a lesson, then as soon as that word is introduced in a kind of listening, speaking environment, they're actually much more empowered to actually speak the word with the correct music, correct tone, and then also to use it correctly. So the reason it's there with the translation is just to reaffirm and make sure that the understanding of the word is good before they start using it.
But it depends on the words, because if there's a word that is a noun, like I don't remember what it was in
it's very difficult, like
exactly to translate. Like if it's a cow, I really don't need to translate it. But if it's, I don't know, ambitious, then yeah, go for it. But it really depends what it is. There's and the less we kind of teach them to depend on translation, the better off they are, because then they're depending on their English knowledge to understand English. And then they're also, when they're looking into how do I actually express myself, they're not going to their Hebrew lexicon to translate and then produce it in English, but they're going directly into their English lexicon. And what we want, what we're striving for, especially if we want our students to be at a B2 or a C1 level when they reach university, we want them to be considered bilingual to a great extent. And if they're constantly translating, they're not there yet. They're not at a level where you can actually consider yourself a bilingual, because I can't use it freely. In order to be bilingual, I have to be able to use both languages freely and on a daily basis without having to think. But if I have to think and say, wait a minute, so if I would say it in Hebrew like this, then I'm going to translate, then it always comes out in Hebrew and English, and it's never correct, then we're not there. So the idea is always to give them less of a crutch with the Hebrew, if you want. That's the and I'm not saying never use Hebrew or Arabic. I'm just saying use it sparingly. That's
the other thing that we noticed as well is this whole issue with the heterogeneous classroom, especially in the lower years before you have your groups, that some students who are lower level will just stick on Quizlet, they'll speak the words, they'll do the sentences, but they still feel pressure and they're not really ready at the beginning of the sessions to go in to do the listening or the conversation. Whereas students who are stronger will just kind of whiz through the Quizlet and do more with the sentences, the more demanding parts of the lesson. So it also allows a teacher who doesn't or isn't able to split their class into groups to have everybody working according to their ability, but knowing full well that there are certain kids who will just do a few parts and there are other students who will do other parts. So it allows for some sort of staging and grading within a lesson, even though everybody's learning the same vocabulary. So when you come to a frontal class, you've got that everybody has covered the same vocabulary, albeit to different levels, but now I can run my class activity knowing that they've all had exposure to the same content. So it works in that way as well. Anyway, Quizlet's there, it's used in a way, but maybe what we need to do is start thinking about other forms of available online gaming that could still give that form of practice. That would be exciting, like a Duca Play, use more things like that.
Yeah. There's a lot of stuff. I mean, I don't know what legally what you're able to put in or not, but there's lots of activities you could do. And just you have to really think about a way to make sure that they're all actually speaking at the end. Because if they stick to Quizlet, they're not getting the speaking in, and then you're kind of defeating the purpose of Speak to Go, because that's what we want. We want more and more speaking in the lesson and in the practice. It's the practice that's going to give them that confidence to actually be able to say the words out loud and to use them in that sentence. So you're always looking for a way to include that into your lesson. So everything you do, whatever you're going to be doing, you've taught new vocabulary, you're reading it in the text, and then you say, okay, so after you've got, who can find this word? Let's find it. And then who can read me the sentence? Who can give me another sentence with that word? And just, you're always kind of including speaking just like randomly or out of whatever is happening. And then you're getting everyone involved. And that would be the idea, especially in a heterogeneous class, and all our classes are heterogeneous, Beneno. You want to make sure that the weaker kids can also be part of the conversation. So by giving something simpler, you're always going to give, the vocabulary. You're going to give a simple, who can complete this sentence, and then the weaker kids can do it. And then obviously, like free production and the discussion, would always be something that the stronger kids could do, and that's exactly what we want. We want them to be able to, to be part of. But you don't want them to take over. So it has to be something that's very balanced with so this was just like, this really is. What I have in my presentation is a whole collection of different activities. So there's whole class activities, improv. This might be something you guys, Caroline, could think of adding into your, in the higher levels, maybe like junior high and up, even grade 6. I'll tell you what I used to do with this. We used to do this every lesson in junior high school when I taught. You get a little card with a situation in the beginning of the lesson. One kid, every lesson, one kid. So it's a 5-minute activity. The kid gets 2 or 3 minutes to think about what they want to say. So they don't have time to write and rewrite long speeches. There's no private teacher to write with them. They're actually thinking about making notes of what they would say about this particular situation. Okay. So for example, this one is here, as a famous athlete, you're offered a 500,000 endorsement to promote a product that you dislike and would never use. Would you endorse it? Okay. This is taken, this is a very high level English, but the idea is, what would you do if this was your situation you were in? So the kid has 2 or 3 minutes to think about it. He stands up in front of the class and gives his presentation. A minute. You have no idea how long a minute of speech is, really, when you're standing in front of a group of people, okay? And I'll never forget, one of my students said, they're gonna give 10-minute talks. I said, maybe 10-minute talk. How long a 10-minute talk is? It's ridiculous. A minute and a half. And then what happens is the other kids in the class have to ask him questions or her questions. And then you're getting that free discussion in class. So then you're having a conversation. And you as the teacher—
When he finishes minute to ask him questions?
Again, sorry, Sarah?
When he finishes to speak, the students ask him questions?
Yeah. So for example, you say, okay, if I were a famous athlete and I was asked to endorse something I don't like, I would never do it because I have my morals, okay? Talk for whatever it is. And then the kids at the other class asks questions. Now, let's say we're a class, okay? And Sarah's giving her talk. So this time I'm going to ask a question, Layla's going to ask a question, and Raviva's going to ask a question, and maybe another person or two. Next time when Layla gives her talk, Raviv's not going to ask a question. I'm not going to ask a question. Other people have to ask questions. So they can't always be the same people asking the questions, which means you're also you're not only grading or assessing the kid who's giving the talk, you're also assessing the kids who are conversing with him. And because they're questions that he doesn't know in advance, in this case, Sarah wouldn't know the answers and doesn't know what she's going to be asked, her responses to that means she has to listen to the question, she has to understand the question, and if she didn't understand the question, she has to negotiate for meaning with whoever asked the question. She'll say, I'm sorry, I didn't understand. Can you explain that again? We're negotiating. So did you mean to ask me da-da-da-da-da? We're negotiating. And that's what we do as English language learners. We're negotiating for meaning with whoever I'm talking to. She negotiates, she gets the meaning, she answers the question based on her knowledge of English, her own language knowledge. There's no reading out of here. It's all based on whatever was asked of her. It could be, whatever the other kid in class thought of asking. So they have to listen to what she said. They have to ask questions based on what she said, and she has to answer based on what they asked. And as a teacher—
Sorry, Miri, how would you do such an activity with a B1, B2 group? Because for an A group, an average, let's say average plus pupil, that's fine. But for an average minus group, how would you do it?
Layla, I used to do it with my heterogeneous classes.
So how would you do it?
Everyone does. You give simpler, you make sure that's a simpler prompt. They'll speak a little less high level or whatever. The questions that are asked could be negotiated a little bit more. You might want to direct the question, help the kids who are asking the question, or help the kid who got the question by rephrasing and asking it, in a simpler manner if it was very difficult.
And if the kid wants to know how to ask the question, would you give a good question? Would you give a correct question? Because maybe the kids don't know how to ask the questions.
Okay, so that's also something you need to know. If your kids don't know how to ask questions, that means, okay, this is something I need to work on as a teacher, which is a great opportunity to find that out. You'll also find out who knows how to ask questions, who doesn't know how to ask questions. But when the kid asks a question that isn't correct English, you could always recast. You repeat what they said correctly so that whoever's listening, whoever's being asked will actually get a question that he could understand. But that's the whole part. That's the whole point of negotiation, is that you didn't understand. Think of yourself going, I don't know, you're going to England and someone talks to you. I'll give you the best example. I was in Ireland a few years ago. I went for a conference and I was at the airport waiting for my airplane. And the whole time I was there, I was fine with the accent, had no problems. Got to the airport, the guy started talking and I asked him what kind of soup was there. He said something that for the life of me, I could never figure out. And I kept saying, I don't understand what you mean. So, and I kept saying, is it this? Is it this? And he kept repeating the word. And I just had no idea what he said. And then eventually had to kind of spell it out to me. So it was potato. So he said, potato, like, what didn't you understand? But it doesn't sound like anything at all that's closely related to potato with the way he said it. But that's negotiation. You don't understand. You ask questions. You repeat, did you mean this? Did you mean that? Did you mean the other? Until you actually get it. When we're in a real life situation and someone says something that we didn't understand, we negotiate. When we're listening to something we live in a world where everything can be rewound and re-listened to, and we can listen to it over and over again. Think about when we were kids and we had the radio or TV that didn't record everything for us and we can run it back and forth 100 times. We missed it, Zell, Migmal. You can't rewind it and listen again. We have to listen. You have to listen and learn to hear and understand what's being said. When we're talking to someone, we negotiate, we go back and forth. So if I don't know how to ask a question, or if I didn't understand what was asked of me, I'll ask the person, what did you mean? That's the beauty of being in front of the person, to be able to answer. And
yeah,
that's
but sorry, Miri, but also asking, what do you mean? If I don't give the kids a bank of questions, they will never say that.
So you're going to have to teach them. That's the scaffolding. That's on you. You're going to teach them how to ask questions. You're going to make sure they know how to ask questions. Look, I wouldn't come in on the 1st of September and do this, but after you've built up questions and you're working with them on, the vocabulary, and then you're going to also make sure your topics are using vocabulary that they already know. They're going to be topics that they're able to discuss. Your class. You're going to pick and choose. You have to pick and choose based on your class. When I knew one of my weaker kids was going to be doing the talk, I'd give him an option of only cards that I knew that he could cope with. Because, like, let's say this endorsement thing, I would never give to a weaker kid. But let's say the one on the bottom in the airplane, I could give that to a weaker kid. There's no reason why he can't talk about that. Maybe not endorsement, but he can definitely say if he would let the wife sit in the window seat or not, and why. That he could do. So you pick and you guide them to the ones that they could do. And the idea is that you're building up their confidence, you're building up their ability, you're building up their language level by giving them an opportunity to be talking and to express themselves and to express an opinion and to stand up in front of other people and to listen to what people are saying to them and to come back and respond to what was asked of them. These are skills that the kids need. This is part of communication. That's what we want. And I'm sure, Caroline, that you have enough topics on Speak to Go that out of those topics, you can pull out questions like this on what would you do if, and based on something. So it's more familiar. They've got all the vocabulary from a lesson that they've been working on. It's something that you create them. I used to sit down and make these things up. Now I found a few online because I can't find my documents from 20 years ago. But I used to make up the questions. I used to make up things like you found out you're at your boyfriend's house and you found his diary on his desk. Would you read it or not? How could you resist? Okay, so what are you going to do? And then they would talk about it's not nice. You don't lie. You don't do. It's private. Okay, all kinds of things like that. You found out your best, especially in high school, you found out your best friend is drinking alcohol. What would you do? Would you tell his parents or not? Your class, you ask the kind of questions based on whatever you've been working on, using the vocabulary you've been working on. Make it up. You need a bank of, let's say, if you have 30 kids, you need 30 cards. That's what it comes down to, because you want different topics for every single student. And you scaffold everything, you teach it in advance, you give it to them. It's all based on knowledge. It's all based on things that they've been working on. That's the idea. That's the idea behind it. And the kids in the beginning are petrified. They're super scared because and then the second time they go, some of them come up and ask to do it again and again, like 2 weeks later, they have a really, really good time with this. It's a lot of fun because it's just a natural conversation with their friends that they never thought of. And for you as a teacher, you get so much information about what everybody can do over a period of 2 or 3 weeks. Everyone's spoken, everyone has asked questions. You get all this information that it's really hard to do otherwise. And it really, really, really doesn't take more than 5, maybe 7 minutes to do with all the questions, with the whole thing. It's a wonderful, wonderful way to get speaking into your lessons. And it could always be based on something you've been talking about, vocabulary you've been using. This is one of my favorite speaking activities that I've ever done. And there's another one that I really like, I'll get to. I'm just gonna skip.
Can I ask something?
Better.
I have a student that her answers are just yes or no. She doesn't know how to reach ideas and any conversations, and in writing, and especially in when we are talking.
Okay.
I asked
What's your
her, what do
question,
you think
Sarah?
about this or about that? And she tells me, I don't know what to say. I don't know what to say. I have no idea.
Okay, so you have to help. Sarah, you have to help her by, in this case, I would even say, if you were asked this in Hebrew, what would you say? And then she would, they've always got something to say in Hebrew. And if they don't, then we've got an issue of it's not a language issue. She just has no opinion about anything. And it could be, there's underlying issues there. But if she's able to express an opinion in Hebrew, then what you want to do is, okay, so now let's see how you can do that in English. You know how to say most of these words. Let's see how you can put them together. And then you have to prompt her to say, she'll start saying, how do you say that in English? How do you say that in English? And she knows a lot more than she realizes. She just needs the confidence to actually speak. And that's why when you do these things, like all these discussion ideas, all these activities where they're talking, where they have to answer simple questions, or they're doing something basic. And that's one of the reasons we like the recording, because the kids are more apt to record. They're more comfortable recording themselves on WhatsApp or on Flipgrid than they are speaking in front of somebody. So because, they can correct it and erase it, just kind of like writing. You can keep doing it over and over again until you get the one you want. The more you do that, the more and then you can always prompt her. So how would you say this in English? How do you say, you know how to say this in English? Come on, you can how would you say, great, no, look, let's go on. So what else? And then you just keep prompting her until it comes out. That's the only way to get her to do it. But you have to find out if it's.
But I think that it's important to get used to think in English and not just to speak in English, right?
Well, that's the idea. But the more they speak in English, the more likely they are to start thinking, if not completely in English, but they're definitely they're accessing their English lexicon as opposed to their Hebrew and translating. And that's what we want.
Okay.
We want them to access their English lexicon. And we want them to realize how much they actually know.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of the, if they're weak groups like Leila is talking about, and we've got lots of those, you give them more foundation, and then from there you build on to that. If they're stronger groups, then you can fly with them. That's you can soar to wherever you want. I mean, that's the beauty of the strong. That's the beauty of teaching a 5-point class as compared to teaching Batza Gimel and Kita Chet. Okay, I mean, but you just have to learn how to let them fly with what they do know. I want to show you a couple more games.
Can I
Sure.
ask a question?
Better.
Okay, what do you mean when you say walkabout?
Okay, I'll show you.
Walkabout, what does it mean?
I'll show you an example of a walkabout. A walkabout is one of these things where you give the kids a piece of paper and you ask them to walk around the room and find out who has something, or who has done something, or who likes something, or whose favorite color is red. And then they have to walk around and ask each other questions. So I'd walk around and say, Revital, have you been out of the country? Let's say in the last 6 months. And if you say yes, I would write Revital over here. And then I walk to the next person and say, Lanit, do you have a pet that isn't a dog or a cat? And if she says yes or no, so I have to write what she has and her name. And then Raviv, do you love science? And if he says no, so okay, so no, Raviv's not good. I go, Yudi, do you love science? And she says no. I keep walking until I find someone, and I'm asking the questions over and over again until I find the answers to it. And they're not allowed having the same person for all of them. And you can make this, we do this you can do this in grade 3 when they're not even reading. They make a chart with, let's say, their favorite colors. You have red, blue, green, yellow, and they walk around and they say, what's your favorite color? And then let's say, Ilanit, what's your favorite color? And you say red. So I go to my chart and I write next to red, I write Ilanit in English. And then I go, and Nurit, what's your favorite color? And then she says, and Yudit, what's your favorite color? And I put the thing. And Leila, and you walk around, you fill up a chart, you fill it up with whatever your teacher said you were supposed to find. You sit down and then you do a whole class discussion. Everyone has to report. You see how many people liked whatever they liked, how many people like the same thing, how many people have a pet that isn't a cat or a dog. That's a walkabout. The only problem with walkabouts is they are extremely, extremely noisy because you have the entire class walking around and talking at exactly the same time. But on the other hand, everyone is walking around and talking at the same time. So you've got and you're walking around listening, and you can, you do informal assessment, write down notes about different kids. But Leila, this is a wonderful way to get them to ask questions. Okay, that's the idea. Walkabouts are an absolute dream. They're just noisy, but they're a wonderful, wonderful tool. Is that clear what a walkabout is?
It is on the floor like a map. Yeah.
No. It's a piece of paper. It's a handout that you give the kids.
Yeah. Okay. I see.
Each student gets one, right? And
Each
it's
student
just like
gets one.
you find someone who, right?
Yeah, it
We
is.
used this several times. Yeah, I remember that.
They're called walkabouts. To find someone who is a walkabout. Yeah, that's
okay,
right.
that's great.
Okay. And this one I found online. I just loved it. So I bring it in as an example. It could be something super simple, like seriously, like favorite colors, different pets, the food when you're doing elementary school, what food, people who I don't know, are walking around, who were born in January, February, March, like whatever. It's irrelevant really. The point is for them to talk and ask each other questions. Whatever your level is, that's what you want to do. That's the that's a walkabout. A couple of other games that I like. There's these games like the roll a topic with a dice. You roll a topic, and then if I roll, you roll the dice, and if I get a 1, I have to say what my favorite movie is. If I roll a 2, I have to say what my favorite food is. So and then you can, if it's in a group, you can play this in a group. The kids play, and then let's say there's 4 kids in the group, they roll the dice and they have to ask each other. Okay, so let's say I'm playing with Caroline, and Caroline rolls the dice and she gets a 3. So we all have to ask her, Caroline, what's your favorite season? Okay, so you get the questions in, and then she has to say my favorite season is, and also explain why. The idea is that there's also an explanation. What's your favorite food? So you can do this at completely different levels. This could be for the much higher level, like a 5-point class. If you could eat only one food for the rest of your life, what would it be? Okay, so I mean, for example, if you found a magic platinum and Genie gave you 3 wishes, what would you wish for? Okay, that's so that's for the higher levels. For the literature, since we're still teaching literature without the Bagut, but we're still teaching it, they can, and this is great for elementary school, for high school, for junior high. The kids have to talk about the story that they're reading, describe the main character, how does the story end, based just on the roll of the dice, whatever they've been doing. So some really, really nice ways of using the dice. And again, you make these up as you go along. You can make up your own questions based on whatever it is you've been teaching. This could definitely be based, Caroline, on stuff that you guys have in your units. The topics, the questions are based on the story that they've been listening to, the clip that they were watching, whatever they were, you can even ask questions. What did you answer? What would you answer when they asked, stuff like that? I mean, you can definitely connect it directly to the different units and speak to go. Another one, the same kind of idea, but with colors. It could be M&Ms, it could be, on candy, it can be little things. They get different colors. Everyone picks, let's say 3, and then they have to answer based on the color that they have in hand. So for example, okay, now everyone who has red, tell us about your favorite hobbies, and they have to talk about it. And then everyone who has green, so if I have red, I'll talk about it. If I don't have green, I don't have to talk about it. So, not everyone gets all the colors. That's the idea. Now, the reason for the candy is because then they can eat them. Okay, we used to play with jelly beans all the time. So then, if we finished with red, so everyone has a red jelly bean, can eat it. So a red M&M or whatever you like. But a lot of teachers don't like using sugar. They don't want the candies. And with allergies and everything, it's a lot safer to just use little cards with, you want to keep saying, that's, in the past, nobody had allergies and people just bloated up for no apparent reason. But now everyone has allergies, so we don't really know what, Caroline, did you see the messages?
After this lecture, where can we see all of these activities?
I'll send the presentation to Caroline, you'll get it.
Okay.
Okay. And another, okay, one of my favorites, my students used to love this. Everyone gets 2 pieces of paper or a piece of paper, and they write 2 questions. They write 2 questions on the piece of paper, and then they fold it into a paper airplane. Okay. And they put their name on the question. Now the questions about them, or it has to be something that they're able to answer. Okay, so I would ask, like, you can ask me, like, what's my favorite color, and what's my favorite pet, for example, or what do I like best about living in the city I'm living in, like whatever you're able to answer. It could also be things that are based, let's say, on something you've been teaching. So what was your favorite part of All My Sons? Okay, that could also be the kind of question. Who's your favorite character and why in All My Sons? I mean, you can guide them to wherever you want, and you put your name. You make a paper airplane, then everyone at the same time tosses their airplane in the air. And then for a period of about 10 to 15 seconds, everyone picks up an airplane and tosses it. So you're getting an opportunity to throw around paper airplanes in your classroom, okay? It's a little messy, but it's fine. And then everyone has to pick up one of the airplanes, and they have to go around and look for and they open it. They find the person who wrote the questions. They have to go up to them and ask them the questions that are written. And the student who wrote them has to answer the questions orally. And then it goes, so everyone is talking to someone, everyone is being asked the questions, and everyone has to answer. Now, what happens in the space of time between when they wrote the question and when they have to answer the question, they didn't memorize the answers, but they know more or less what they want to say, so that they're actually answering using their own language, and they're not answering a memorized text. So it's a really nice activity, and it takes about maybe 15 minutes, and you get everyone involved. Everyone is speaking, everyone is doing the discussion, everyone is talking, and just the fact that they got to throw around paper airplanes. I know my kids used to say, remember one of the parent-teacher nights, the kid came with, one of the boys came with, it was a little girl, she came with her father, and she says, so they came to ask what's going on, and she says, Abba, ושיחקנו מטוסי נייר בכיתה, וזרקנו, and he looked at me, and so I had to explain what we did. But the kids really, really like it's polka, it's a really, and it's a great way to get them to talk to each other. So, and there's a whole bunch of other activities here. There really are. There's a whole bunch. I have 34 slides. Some of them were the stuff from the beginning, but a lot of the others are just activities, all kinds of different things. Any one of these could either be an assessment or a, what's the word? Like a post activity after something you've been reading in class, a unit they've done in Speak to Go, a story you've been working on, anything. It could be just about anything you want. It's a follow-up to. It could be a beginning towards. It could be something that you want to have them ask a little bit. and then let's say they spend time doing the questions, and that because you led them for a certain topic, and then from there they're going into the story and the book, they're going into a unit in Speak to Go, depending on wherever you want to go with it. The idea really is that in every lesson, or in as many lessons as you possibly can, you incorporate little activities, and every now and again, let's say every week and a half, let's say every second week, you have a bigger activity that's more of a thing like the paper airplanes, because that takes time. But the little ones, the ones that are really, really quick, you can do in the beginning of every lesson, things like the M&Ms or the dice, which are like a group work thing. Every group works on it. It takes also 15 minutes or so for but everyone's talking and everyone's listening, and everyone has to express themselves, and you walk around and you listen to them and you take notes and you keep track of what's going on, and you've just got lots and lots and lots of speaking going on in your classes. And seriously, that's all you need. You need the kids to be talking, you need the kids to be listening to each other and interacting with each other. And if you remember in the beginning, interaction is probably the most important thing, because that's what we want. We want the kids to be able to communicate. And if they don't understand what's being said, and everyone switches over to Hebrew, then we're missing out opportunities to actually get English in. I can't. Okay, so here I've given a few good sites that work, that you just some ideas there. So basically, if I were to conclude, there's, again, I didn't do the whole thing. There's a whole bunch of other activities. Caroline, I'll send it to you, give it to them. They'll see the activities. It's up to you. You have to use your imagination, dig deep within yourself, and I'm sure you'll find lots and lots of really nice activities that you could do. Take what there is already made, adapt them to suit your own classes. Just as long as the kids are talking, it doesn't really matter. As long as they're getting an opportunity to express themselves, but to express themselves and not to read their answers from their notebook. That's not speaking. That's the idea. And lots and lots and lots of scaffolding.
That's
So
great.
Zoe, I'm going to
that's
shut up now.
Helpful. Miri, thank you. That's really helpful. If there are any really quick questions for Miri, please ask now. If not, I'm sure you can be in touch with her outside of the session. But I want to give everyone a short break, and then we'll come back and let's actually put a lesson together. Let's take in all the different parts that Miri said and create more than just a lesson. What we want to do is we want to use our imagination and create a whole lesson plan, something you as a teacher can do. You can go into a classroom, you have that ice-breaking activity or that activity that's going to introduce the topic or the vocabulary. You have a way to let your students practice and to become familiar and confident with the vocabulary and the chunks. And then you come back and you do something else. You might want to have a YouTube video in there, lots of resources we can pull in, but the idea is let's put all of this together, use your imagination, and really, as you say, pull that rabbit out of the hat so we have a complete lesson plan with Speak to Go in the middle, but a lot of other parts that make it so sort of wholesome and beneficial for your students. So if there are any quick questions. Okay, so let's take a 10-minute break. We're going to let Miri go. Miri, thank you very, very much.
Pleasure.
I really appreciate it. I'll share the presentation. I'll share the recording as well. But that was lovely. Thank you. Really appreciate that.
My absolute pleasure. I will send you, do you want me to send you in WhatsApp?
Fine, whatever's easier for you, or if it's a Google document sharing, whatever's easier.
Not a Google Doc. You want me to put, I can make it as a Google Doc, whatever you want.
Do what's easier, and I will find a way to forward it to
you. So I'm dragging it into your WhatsApp right now.
All right, fine, and I will drag it out of my WhatsApp and into all of theirs.
I send that to you. If you guys want anything else, just let me know.
You're getting lots of thank yous on the chat, but that's great. All right.
Pleasure. My absolute pleasure. And you can give them my my email.
Fine.
And my phone number. If anybody needs anything, feel free. Enjoy. Good luck. Have a wonderful rest of the year.
We're going to write some great lessons. Let's see if we can stun everybody and what they're actually able to do. Okay, so
thanks, guys.
Guys, let's meet again at 6 o'clock. Is that enough of a break? Got time to go and get yourself a cup of tea, coffee, whatever it is you like. Right. All right, let's do this. we are going to, sorry, can you go on mute? You're going on mute?
Yeah.
Okay, it's done. All right, fine. Let's just start. Let's just get into it. So what I want to explain is there are three sides really to writing a Speak to Go lesson. One is the lesson content itself, which is translated into the speech practice that the students work with on Speak to Go. The second part is the addition of the extra activities, the Quizlet, the Educa Play, the YouTube videos, the things that are going to connect with the kids, make it a little bit more involved, give them extra recycling, the things you have to find to make the lesson more than it already is. And then finally, there are the things that Miri talked about, which is taking this Speak to Go practice lesson that you put together and turning it into something that becomes a class activity that makes it real, that makes it relevant, that gets the kids moving and talking to each other. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by actually looking at Speak to Go because it's a technology, so it works in a very structured way. I've made notes with examples for all of you. So don't worry if you forget something or you don't understand, it's all in notes and I will share them with you and you can go through it all in your own time. Did everybody have a chance to look at a Speak to Go lesson and try and use it? Was there anyone who didn't? Okay, all right, fine. So what I'm going to do is you can all see my screen, yes? Everyone can see my screen?
Yes, yeah.
Fine. I'm gonna let's just for 1 minute, let's just take a look at a particular Speak to Go lesson. So we're in Foundation. Foundation's the most recent product. So it's the product that's probably freshest. So it's probably the highest starting point for you. And we want to basically push your lessons beyond this. So we're going to look at one of these lessons, this lesson here, Where I Live. It starts with Quizlet. I understand what Miri says about translation. Our experience in the classroom is if the students don't understand the language, then they won't use the English that you want them to use. So start with some way of actually using Hebrew or Arabic to give your students an understanding of the language. So every lesson will have Quizlet and it will be set up. You then have a video.
Hi, my name is Sam. I am 9 years old. My family lives in Tel Aviv, Israel. I am happy to meet you. Can I meet your family?
Okay, so
Live.
what I want to say about that video is it's not just a video. It's like you putting yourself in front of the student because we know how focused they all are when they look at screens. And suddenly the vocabulary of the lesson, family, I live, all of that, it's right in front of them. They're hearing it and they're seeing it. Now, even if the students can't read, there's this beginning of letter and pattern recognition that you're introducing. So this is specific for year 4. But with older years where they can read, the video is an opportunity for you to basically take their attention, because all kids love watching videos, and just push some more English into them. Give them exposure to the English that you want them to be practicing for the lesson. So you have your way of introducing the new vocabulary, whether it's Quizlet or you find something else, something else, that's great. Then you want to find a video on YouTube. You want to find something that's going to introduce the topic where they're going to hear the vocabulary. And we say no more than about 2 minutes for a video, because otherwise it becomes like watching television. It's not, or YouTube. It's not a lesson. And then we get into Speak to Go. So Speak to Go starts with the vocabulary of the lesson. Everything is about recycling. So you have the, let's see if it will work for me. Live. Okay, I'm not on a microphone and my voice is going to Zoom and back again. So it's the feedback's never very good, but you get the vocabulary.
Come.
So here,
Family.
this is what the lesson is based around. This is your choice of vocabulary that you want your students to basically take command of. You then have the speak part.
Where do you live?
Now, okay, here you've got the prompt, you've got the character, maybe this could be a video, maybe it could be something else, you decide. But here what we're doing is we're taking the vocabulary and we're putting it into correct English sentences that are of a manageable length. So when you're writing your content, be aware of the capability of your students. So 4 words, 5 words for somebody at foundation level is appropriate. If you want to extend that to 8 to 10 words and then 12 words for students in junior high and high school, again, that's appropriate. But remember, when you're putting the sentences together, you're not trying to, you don't want your students to fall. You want your students to speak with confidence and actually enjoy being able to speak and pronounce English. So you're putting the vocabulary into use. You're putting it into use in these correct, great sentences. You're getting them to practice and recycle in the way you want, but keep it realistic. You know, you could put a long sentence here that the students might actually try and pronounce, but they don't really understand and they'll never use. So keep it within the remit of what's going to be acceptable and manageable for your students. Okay. And you then have an opportunity to do one or two things. You can introduce your students to a listening exercise with questions and answers, or you can introduce them to a simulated conversation. Either way, the idea again is to recycle the vocabulary. So both of them start with
My name is Sam.
an introduction where you ideally reuse the vocabulary. Excuse me. And then, okay, let's just go to the end of this.
How old is Sam?
And then in the listening, you have a right answer and a wrong answer. But the vocabulary here in this lesson is all about 9 years old. It's something we're repeating. So the correct answer that the students are pushed and encouraged to speak. Sorry, Robitel?
No.
Okay. So that you want to recycle the vocabulary in the correct answer.
Hi, nice to meet you.
Now in conversation.
I'm Sam. I live.
Go again.
Well done. That was
Hold on.
excellent. Do you live in a city?
So again, do you live in a city? You've got the question there. Now we're in conversation. In conversation, you recycle the vocabulary, but you do it with 2 possible answers. So what we're teaching the students here is there's more than one way to answer a question. So if they're not sure about something, it's okay to speak because there are many ways to respond. So when you put your lesson together, you can use a listening exercise or you can use a conversation. Both of them have an introduction where you want the students to hear the new vocabulary. And then they have answers where you want the answers to recycle and use the vocabulary again. And then you have the option to add a game. In this particular case, it's a Quizlet game. It could be a Duca play again. Find something fun. It's just about the vocabulary and creating a little bit of fun and competition in the lesson. So if we now take a look at a unit. So here's the lesson that we were looking at, Where I Live. You can see this was the vocabulary, live, come, family, city, where. That there's all new words that are introduced. We then in the speak sentence have a sentence that uses each of those new words. So they use each word in a practical way. You can see the word live is there, or I live in again. Where do you come from? My family, was it my city is, and so on, come and meet my family. Everything is recycled at least once in the speak section. And then what you have is either a conversation or a listening or both. So to give you an example with the conversation, you had Sam giving his short introduction. Nice to meet you. I'm Sam. I live with my family in Israel. So you've got a nice introduction. And then you have Sam, where do you live? And in one of the answers, we've used the word live. We've recycled it. I live in Israel. But not every student is going to be at this level able to do that. So we've also given a shorter answer because Maybe a student just wants to say in Israel. You then have, do you live in a city? And just as we saw when we did the exercise, no, I live, or yes, Tel Aviv city. So you're recycling the vocabulary of the lesson in a pseudo conversation, but it's a realistic conversation because you've had these two characters that Sam's introduced himself, and everything is kind of on topic. You're not recycling the vocabulary in a way that takes the students from talking about one subject to talking about another. You're keeping it very relevant for the students. With the listening exercise, you can see the text here. Oops, sorry, I did there. I'm Sam, I'm 9 years old. And you then have questions. Where is it? How old is Sam is one of the questions. Well, the students have listened and they've had the prompts on screen. And the answer that we want him to give is Sam is 9 years old. And the answer we don't want him to give is he is 6. So we're pushing them to recycle the vocabulary. Now, this particular lesson falls within a unit. So in the unit, we have nice to meet you, where I live, my home, meet my sister-in-law family. And what you find within the unit is that as soon as you introduce vocabulary, so for example, in lesson 1, we've introduced the expression years old. In lesson 2, 3, 4, I can recycle years old as many times as I want because that's something the students have already been taught and taught to use. So you're not just recycling within a lesson, but once you create a lesson, you then expand that lesson out, it becomes part of a unit. And within that unit, you can recycle the vocabulary as much as you want. So if you think about the tools you're giving your students, you're giving them a few words, and then you're broadening out those words, and you're recycling and you're adding more and so on. And that's sort of that tree of the vocabulary that they actually have access to just keeps growing. Let's just see. Any questions on that so far? Anything, anyone, any questions? That's all okay? Okay.
Actually,
please.
I'm really sorry. It is not a question about exactly what you were saying, but you know, if I want to test my students, I know that some of the units have at the end of the unit there is an exam. But
there is, and you can add that exactly. You know, you're absolutely right. So let's show you all of that. I don't know if we've got one here, but we can have a look. Okay, we don't have one in that. We do. Okay, so the other part that you can add to a lesson is an assessment test. He's absolutely right, Omer, thank you. And this is just a Google form. You create it as you want to build it, and we just embed it in the lesson. But it allows you to take the vocabulary of the lesson and to give your students a kind of a score on how much they've understood. So you've got here, you've got all of your vocabulary, live, come, and so on. Let me just do it really quickly so you can see. The way that we happen to have done it is Hebrew or Arabic into English, and then in reverse. So you're testing them again. Do they really, really understand the vocabulary? So the speaking is one part. This is just another way of checking. And we've also recycled a lot of the content. My name is Sam, I'm 9 years old. Now they're actually seeing it. So for older students, you can actually use this. You can be devious if you want to. No, you don't have to be. My name is Dan, yes or no. So this is something that's foundation level. The kids can't really read here. So it's something that they would do as a class with the teacher, but as the students get older, they would do it on their own. But let me just show you. And what happens is they get a grade. You can view your score, but then when I refresh my screen, when I go back into my Speak to Go lesson, the score will, if I refresh, the score will appear for me. So I know how I've done, the teacher knows how I've done because the score is sent to the teacher's dashboard. So you've got another dimension, but you may have other things that you want to bring into a lesson in order to test your students. So the first thing to focus on is, here you go, you haven't passed the test, so go back and do it again. I think they need like an 85 in order to get through. You need to think about what you want your students to practice in a lesson and make sure that it's realistic for them. So you can do it by starting with a topic and vocabulary. You can do it by starting with a text, something that you're going to use in the conversation and the listening. And you can extract from that certain vocabulary that you would like the students to practice and use. And then you can build a lesson around that. It's really up to you. The key is to keep it manageable for the age group, and to try and make it relevant. When we originally wrote the lessons, we taught the students vocabulary, but when they were going through, when they went through the speak sentences, they didn't flow. And you watch students practicing them and they'd be going, the space shuttle was launched in 2002. And then they'd be going, and for breakfast, I like to eat pancakes. And there was no connection. So their English and the way that they spoke became very robotic. But if you create an understanding around a topic and you connect everything in the lesson, when the students speak and practice, it makes much more sense to them. It becomes more natural. And they speak with like an awareness and a confidence that you want them to pick up with their English.
May I ask a question, Caroline?
Please.
Yeah, I don't usually speak so much, I'm sorry, but I have questions. Last time I remember that you said that one of the teachers wrote a lesson about a unit in the book, Way to Go. It's a book for 7th graders. It was something about an earthquake. And could I see what that teacher has done? Because what I see, is it possible to show that? Because it's another level and it's taken from, units that we usually teach.
All right, hold on. Let's have a look here. Let's have a look here. Did a little sample lesson template. Maybe I've got something in here. If not, I can show you. So I've put this together for you to explain how to write the lesson. Here, example of a junior high and high school lesson. So I put an example at the end. So this is junior high, you can see. Vocabulary, 1, 2, 3, 4. It's got 6 words. You've got lead to, it's a chunk. You could add another word or two, or a lexical chunk if you wanted to the lesson. You can see that all of the sentences are on topic. You're not jumping from one to another. Studying hard will lead to success. It's a really nice expression, lead to success. It's something that you want them to use and repeat. I'm interested in, even though this is not something that they're actually learning and practicing in the lesson. It's like saying, in my opinion, or I think that. All of these kind of useful phrases, bring into your lessons as much as possible, use them, recite and get the kids speaking them. It's something Miri said about, there's common vocabulary that you use a lot in your English classroom, so always speak it in English. With some of these chunks, just repeat them. Make it really natural for the kids because they're good conversation pieces. And also if you have a phrase like, in my opinion, it also buys them a little bit of thinking time. If they're giving an answer to something, if someone asks them a question and they're, oh gosh, how do I do to translate? And they start with, in my opinion, it's a great time buyer. So let them use chunks like that. So you can see here the sentences. So this is, Layla, this is a lesson that I would say it's probably year 7, maybe year 8. I am interested in learning about, maybe it's not, it's year 8, other cultures and traditions because they're quite high level words. Some teenagers do not keep family traditions. Again, it's all on topic. We can learn from our failures to have greater success in the future. There's something else we found. Because the students actually do understand what they're saying, if you put negative connotations into what they're saying, they tend to it really comes across in the way that they actually speak and use the language and the way they feel about what they're saying. So try to keep things positive and interesting. Don't focus too much on, there's so many negative aspects in life and there's so many problems, especially, you know, poor teenagers. Life's tough, life's hard. Try to focus on the positive side of any topic that you may choose. So here you have a text. I'll just do a little word count for you so you can see rough. Okay, so it's 62 words. That should be about not even 30 seconds of audio. So remember, your text is something the students do not see. It's like the mate sub with the listening. They will only hear the narrator speak this. So what you want with the text is it's short enough that it doesn't blow them away, but it is long enough that it gives them an understanding of the topic you want them to discuss, and it recycles the vocabulary. So once again here, you can see we've recycled successful, culture, so on. And it doesn't matter if it's a derivative, a different form of a word. We're talking about speech, whether it's singular or plural, whether it's past tense or future. If it's age appropriate, use it and give the kids as much exposure to language as you can. You know, once they've learned to speak the word tradition, then they should be able to say traditional. So, and using those words, the word in context in a correctly structured sentence helps them immensely because they learn the variety that's available to them with that newly learned word. Okay, so here we've gone with a conversation. Growing up is an exciting time of your life. You work hard, you hope it will lead you to be successful. And in conversation, remember, it's a question where there are two possible answers and both are right. So what you've got here is you've got answer one that recycles the word success, and you've got answer two that recycles the word success in a different form and also fail. So whatever the students speak in response, and some students will speak both answers, whatever the students speak in response, you're winning because they are recycling the vocabulary you want them to be comfortable with. So make sure your answers, you'll see here in every sentence recycles another of the new words. So if you think about how many times in a lesson your students are seeing, hearing, speaking, you've got all of the words, then again in speak, and then again in the conversation or the listening, whatever you decide to produce. So it's not so easy tying everything in, which is why for some of the junior high and high school lessons, you might actually want to start with your text and work backwards from it. So take your text and build your sentences out of the text. Use your text to create your questions and answers. Okay, now in conversation, it's something that Miri talked about the test is really when they speak themselves, and they've got all these options available now to actually practice speaking and send a recording to a teacher or record themselves on WhatsApp and listen to their recording. But there's this free speech question that is an option for you in conversation, and I would just implore you to use it. So if you talk to teachers, they love the fact that they don't need to listen to every pronunciation of every sentence and every word and every answer, but they can click in on the teacher's dashboard and they can go into a student and they can hear the student freely speaking. So free speech questions are with no prompts on screen, nothing, but they ask the student to recycle the lesson. So here you've got this lesson, it's all about growing up and learning and traditions. And the question is an open question. Are there any traditions you keep in your culture? Tell me how you feel about them. And I can give that answer and I can recycle all of the vocabulary in the lesson. So if you're going to do a lesson with a conversation section, please use the free speech questions. And if you want to, you don't have to stick a free speech question at the end. You can put it in the middle. It really doesn't matter. Where you choose to do it is up to you. But use that opportunity to get your students to speak a free answer and let the teacher hear that recording. Okay. With listening, it's a little bit harder to recycle all of the vocabulary in the answers. So here we've got a text. This text is a little bit longer, 93 words. And here what we do is we ask the students a question. There's a right answer and a wrong answer. But what we try to do is recycle the vocabulary in both the correct answer and the incorrect answer. So the technology, if a student gives a bad answer, will say, that was not the right answer, but well spoken, try again. And it just leaves the correct answer on the screen. So they're then pushed just to get to speak again, to give another answer. So listening is there. There's no free speech option in the listening exercise. But try, if you're going to do listening, to keep the text a manageable size. This is 93 words, it's quite a lot, but try to keep it a manageable size so that it's not too much, because your students are just listening and absorbing information and then having to give a right or wrong answer to those questions. So that's an example of a junior high lesson, but junior high school lesson, but what you want to do is you want to write the lesson, great, but also add to it. I want to add a video here. I want to add a video, 2-minute video that talks about growing up in different cultures, or my opinion of the traditions in my family, whatever it may be. But that adds so much to the student's experience going through this lesson. Especially there are some great videos where you have students speaking about their opinions on these things. And for a teenager to hear another teenager speak, it connects. It's easy for them to listen to. Think about how you want to add other resources. What other gamification can you add that is going to endorse and really sort of strengthen the lesson that you've got here? So when you go into Speak to Go, let's just go back to home. There's digital practice available that allows you to add an extra layer of practice with the same vocabulary, but using, let's just go here. So you've got digital fun and you've got unit reviews where the students get to practice using other tools like a Juka Play. So you can add something like that to your lesson. So what's set in stone, what's structured, is the fact that you have the opportunity to give your students words, let them hear them and speak them and get feedback. And then to use those words in sentences, again, to hear them, speak them, get feedback. And then to use either a conversation or a listening to add that extra layer of recycling and include the free speech question. In addition to that, you can add so much. As you said, as Omer said, you've got the assessment test. You can add that. You can add anything else. So create an all-round lesson, try to use a video, the kids really respond to it, keep it on topic. Any other questions about lessons? As I say, I'll share the document with you so you've got all of that.
Yeah, one more question for the time being one. What is the platform where we can write all these?
Okay, so when you write lessons, you actually will write them exactly like this. You will. I've given you instructions that explains every lesson has words. You write your words out. You separate each word with a semicolon. You write your sentences. They must be in correctly structured English. Must look correct because the students see them. And at the end of each sentence, put a semicolon. I've explained to you how to structure the conversation part and so on. So you will write this in, you can see here exactly how I've done it. So for word, you basically write word 1, semicolon, word 2, semicolon. I've put exactly 5 to 9 words depending on age. At foundation level, no more than 5. And try in your words to, excuse me, to include at least one chunk. Get those lexical chunks in there. The students actually pick them up beautifully because there's a music to them. They hear the native speaker speaking them, and it's just like it's manageable for them. I've put here from the bands. fine, use what you think. I know some of you are not so warm on the bands, but use language that you want your kids to be using in class. So this document explains exactly how you structure everything. You write words and then you do word 1, semicolon, word 2, semicolon. The same with sentences. Sentence 1, semicolon, sentence 2, semicolon. What I would say is here in the word section, you can see the word, it has a lowercase w. Unless it's a name, everything is done in lowercase letters. There's no capital letters, but every time you have a sentence, it's got to be grammatically correct. If you're doing a listening or a conversation, there's an introduction text, and at the end of the text, just put a question mark. That's it. When you write your conversations, you have your question or a statement, a question mark. You have your response 1 as a correctly structured sentence, semicolon, response 2 and a vertical line. So all of the instructions are here. We're going to write something now together so you can see how it all works. So I've put all of this together and I will share it with all of you. You've got samples here of the junior high lesson with both listening and conversation. I've put some sort of tips at the end. Now, if you're going to write a unit, why not write a unit to tackle some sort of a language learning point? You know, do you want to look at something positive and negative sentences? Is there something you want your unit to reinforce in your students rather than just vocabulary and topic? There's so much more that you can write into a lesson. You'll see some of the units are let's practice WH questions, all of that. So you've got that ability to teach your students. It's almost unbeknown to them. You know, they'll be speaking a lesson, they'll be speaking positive and negative sentences. They will have no idea that that's the skill you're getting them to practice. But when it comes to the classroom, you suddenly go, right, kids, let's look at positive questions. Suddenly it's familiar to them because they've already spoken it. So you can use these lessons to reinforce so much more than just spoken language. Okay, I'll share the document with you and it goes through everything in simple detail, shall I say.
Another question, sorry, Caroline. How do I have access? You've asked if somebody has tried a lesson with our pupils. How do I have access to what my pupils have done?
Okay, so does anybody else want to demonstrate this? Has anybody else got a class who are working with Speak to Go who wants to go into their control panel? Oh, guys, really? Come on, okay, all right, I'm gonna do it. Right, from next session, you guys are doing all the demos, not me. Okay, let's see here. You can see my internet slowly dying. When you go into Speak to Go, you will click on your name here. It will say teacher, and you will then get a list of your classes.
Yeah, sorry, but I tried mine and I haven't seen the teacher.
Okay, so we need to do that for you.
Okay.
Okay, I'll sort it out for you. No problem. No problem.
Thanks. Okay.
All right. Are you guys feeling like we can try and write a lesson together? Let's write a lesson. Let's go through and we're going to do a new page and we're gonna write a lesson. Right, who's picking the topic? What's the topic? No, let's start again. What age group are we aiming for? Someone shout something out.
7th grade B group.
7th grade? Okay, we're going for 7th grade. Perfect. Right, what's the topic?
Health.
Ooh, nice. Okay. Sorry, health and what did you say?
Healthy food, unhealthy food, junk food, all related.
Okay, healthy food. Let's keep so very valid point. Keep it positive. We don't want them to think about the negative side. We want them to speak. It's got to be very positive. Okay, fine. Right. So let's start with our words. We're going to write in 2 different ways. Let's start with our words. Vocabulary that you want and you think your 7th grade students should be able to speak, or you want them to be able to speak on the topic of healthy food.
Fruits, vegetables.
Well, hold on. Are fruit and vegetables, are they good words for grade 7? Or are they kind of more band 1 words? Like I would expect, I would expect for me.
They
fruit and
already know
vegetables-
it, yes.
Exactly. So those are words that you've got in your toolbox. Assume that you can recycle that as much as possible. Let's have some words about healthy food that are band appropriate. I'm not even going to open the band. You're the teachers, you're in the classroom, you know best what your students are capable of.
We have a list from the books, from the unit. We don't have to.
I know, right? I know.
We don't need to sit a galgal. How do you say? Invent the wheel.
So has someone got a book to hand? Ilanit, come on, your kids cook at home. What are they cooking? What is the healthy food vocabulary? Give me some vocabulary.
I think pasta sums that up.
No, I want. No.
Sorry, I
Maybe
see
we
that.
can
I
say
see that in
Italian
6th grade.
Vegetables, 7th grade. What level is this? Like A level, B level, C level?
7th grade. There's no division.
Fine.
You've got in 7th grade. You've got everything, and you've just got the whole gamut.
All levels, all levels.
Yeah. So healthy food.
In 6th grade, they studied. they
Italian
had a
food is not
unit
healthy,
saying
by the
healthy.
way.
I know you're talking about pasta. So you could have Italian food is
Just
not
kidding.
healthy, but it's tasty.
Not just
It's
food,
tasty,
it's
a good
fitness
word.
room, it's sports,
Vegetables.
it's exercise.
So we said vegetables is more
Yeah.
like it's
Do you want to be specific? Like, we can
I
go for
want to go-
cucumbers, tomatoes, lettuce.
No, I don't. And I'll tell you why. Because vocabulary like that, they should know at elementary level.
Yeah.
I want to take them up a level. Like you might want to put a chunk. Might want to put a chunk here. Good for me. It's simple, basic words.
Nutritious.
Oh. Now, is that a good year 7 word?
I haven't taught 7th grade in a while, so I'm not the right person to ask.
You
Okay.
don't know. Maybe vegetarian, maybe.
Okay. I just want you to know how hard this is. All right. Okay. Now I'm gonna. All right. Let's. Sorry.
You can add how much is it?
Okay. One more.
Enjoy your meal.
Or do you want delicious?
Delicious.
Is that a good word?
Yes.
Okay. Let's leave it at that. Right. I want a sentence. Firstly, we can take any of these words out and we can replace them. It's up to us. So now let's think about speak sentences. So I want a sentence with Italian food. Come on, something with a sentence with Italian food, maybe that recycles.
Is delicious.
Okay, is that a good sentence for grade 7, or should we?
We should upgrade it.
Come on. How about that? So in one sentence, you're recycling. We've got this, that's great. We've got delicious. Oops. That's great. And we've got good for me. Okay. Another sentence. Let's have tasty. Ronit, a sentence with tasty.
The dessert was tasty.
Okay, but I want the sentences to flow.
Okay.
So if I say the dessert, they've got no point of reference for dessert. So what can we have? Just change the sentence slightly.
Maybe pasta is tasty and it's good for vegetarians.
Great. So, okay. That's nice because it connects pasta with Italian as well. That's nice. Okay.
We can also do vegetarians eat nutritious, but often not so delicious or tasty food, something like that. Eat nutritious, but
Let's like eat nutritious food, but it is not,
often
nice.
not
Yeah, often
tasty
not tasty
or
Okay.
delicious or whichever one.
That's fine. It's great. Perfect. See, that's a good sentence because you can kind of imagine them smiling as they say it. So it's a nice feeling sentence. Okay. Who else? Come on. Nicole, do you want to add something? Who else is out there? Raviv, come on. Oh, look, Raviv, what are you eating? That's not fair.
How much do you pay? How much do you
Italian
pay?
food.
Sorry, go on.
How much do you pay for a good pasta meal at a good restaurant?
For a meal at an Italian restaurant, for a good meal at, and then we've got. Okay, all right. So we've kind of got, I'm going to put, so how much, like that, and we've got Italian again, it's another recycled word. Restaurant, should restaurant be a word or
it could be a new word, restaurant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got quite a lot of words. Is there anything there that you want to take out when you look at it? All right, let's have one more sentence because we've got the option. We've got tasty, we've got good for me, or good for me. Let's have something with whatever, good for me. What else? What else do you think? Einat, a nice sentence from you. What do you think?
I'm thinking. And thinking also.
No, not at all. Let's have, we've got, what are the tougher words there? What are the words that what are the tougher words?
Nutritious.
Nutritious is hard, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, let's have something about fruit and vegetables and being nutritious.
Maybe you should eat.
Can I say we should eat?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fruits and vegetables every day. Oh.
Fruit and veg. Okay. Fruit and.
Okay. I'll call you when I'll do my lesson.
No chance. Every day. Okay, fine. All right, fine. Okay. And that's interesting because fruits, it's fruit. So it's nice for them. You're just teaching them correct use of the form. So that's great as well. All right, fine. So we've got vocabulary, we've got sentences. Now, what are we going to do? We're going to do a conversation piece talking about it and then have questions with right and possible answers, or we're going to do a kind of a listening piece and questions with right and wrong answers.
We can try and we can try and find a video about people eating at an Italian restaurant.
That's lovely. That's okay. But now we need to write something that is like a conversation or a listening piece. Who wants to be my guinea pig and basically use all of this vocabulary? Oh, Raviv just coughed. Raviv, I would like you to basically, I want a paragraph that makes sense and uses this vocabulary.
I'd be happy to, but you would have to enlarge the words because I can't see them.
Oh, sorry. Okay, let's go. Let's make I'm sorry. Is that better?
Little bit, if you could just maybe a few percent, that's better. Thank you.
Okay. You won't be able to see when I start typing, but let's go. All right. Okay, talk to me.
Just a kind of free association using those words?
Exactly.
Okay. Italian food is my favorite food. For my birthday, we will go to an Italian restaurant and eat our favorite foods. Period. My wife is a vegetarian.
I'm not going to put, wait a minute, hold on. Let's, because it's a teenager who's going to be saying this, can I say my sister or something?
Ah, okay, sure.
That's fine, that's fine.
My sister is a vegetarian, which is good because she won't eat my lasagna with meat.
Is lasagna a cognate?
What's a cognate?
Like a word that's the same in Hebrew and English. In Hebrew, is lasagna?
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, she won't eat my lasagna.
Which has meat.
Okay.
Period. More?
Yeah, I want the words. I want nutritious. I want, you've got restaurant in there. Maybe talk about dessert being delicious.
Okay.
Something being tasty.
Good Italian food isn't that nutritious. And isn't usually kosher. But it's still my favorite. I think we've exhausted most of these words, no?
Yeah, but I want to know about delicious desserts. I mean, can we get delicious?
Sure.
Oh, okay, let's change it. Usually kosher, but you can say it is delicious. I think it is.
No, it's delicious because it's not kosher, so it shouldn't be a but.
Ah, what? Oh, no. Oops. Okay. So what shall I do?
It's usually not kosher and therefore delicious.
No, don't. We're not getting political here. Okay. Oh, should we say, I think Italian desserts, we'll say something like that. I think.
Are the best part of the meal.
Well, they are delicious or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, we could say my favorite is tiramisu.
No, it's enough.
Or enough cognates.
I'll tell you why. Tiramisu is great. Okay, it's fine because it's the same in Hebrew and in English, but we're teaching English. We're not teaching them to say the names of Italian foods in English. So keep it on spec. Okay, fine. So here we've got something. Now comes the tricky part.
Sorry, Caroline. What's the difference between the first speak and this beautiful paragraph?
So this is going to be a conversation, if I can spell it. So in the conversation section, the students hear somebody speaking a text. So like in our example, you had the little character Sam say, Hi, I'm Sam. I'm 9 years old. I live in Tel Aviv, a city in Israel. That's kind of the level that was for grade 4. So here, your students are going to hear this, and then they're going to be asked questions. And in the conversation section, there are 2 possible answers that they can give. So they're going to hear a question about the text, and they're going to have the answers on screen. They don't have to stress too much, but they do have to speak those answers. So you might, okay, what is his favorite food? Question mark. Okay, and then you might want to say he loves Italian food. And what's another? Let's do something else. He thinks Italian food is tasty.
You could include a true/false question. For example, his sister eats meat. True or false?
You could say, does his? I'm not sure how it will work where you have, because you don't want to say true or false, but you could say, does his sister eat meat? Yeah, no, she. Oops. No. She is a vegetarian, and then you could have here his sister, because they should know how to. His sister doesn't eat meat. She's vegetarian. Okay, you could do something like that. I'm rushing now because I'm conscious of the time. Because if you had like a true and a false, how would that work? So let's rewrite that sentence now as a true and a false and see if we can make it work. So you want to say his sister eats meat. And then what would you?
Is that true or false? No.
Okay. You can see how bad my typing is, everyone. I'm embarrassed. And what would you say? How would you give your answers so you're recycling?
It is false, comma, she is a vegetarian.
Okay, and another answer that maybe has the word nutritious in it.
Are you implying that vegetarianism is synonymous with eating healthy?
No,
Not always.
I'm just trying to get the vocabulary in there, but I need another answer that's also a possible correct answer and still respond to the question. Anyone? All right. I find when you ask true or false difficult, but we need to think about a way to do it. But okay, so you get the idea. It's not so easy to take vocabulary and turn it into a lesson. But if we'd started with this, if we'd started with the text, let's just put it in yellow, and we'd basically gone through it and said, okay, that's a good word. That's a good word. And so on. If we'd worked backwards from the text, it's actually then very easy to create everything else. You take your vocabulary from the text. You can almost just copy paste for your speech sentences from the text as well. So when you write your lessons, if you don't want to start with vocabulary, start with the text for the conversation or the listening part, and then build it out from there. Okay. How's everyone feeling? You're all very, very quiet.
I think it's a pity that we have to invent the wheel, because many people have worked so much on writing the books and all the material that we have.
So the issue we have with the books is, apart from our relationship with UPP, we don't have copyright. So we can't lift content from books. But I believe that you as a teacher are allowed to, if you've bought a book, you can photocopy it, you can give out pages from it. So the situation is different. If you want to write a letter from a book, do it. I'm just trying to think about lessons where there may be some content. I think we had.
I remember you showed us a little bit
Yeah.
of something from Way to Go.
Yeah, I can't remember what I did. Maybe it was something like this crazy weather, but it wasn't.
I don't have the book here. But,
Yeah, I'm just trying to see if I can find it. Maybe here, our weather. There's a, see, I mean, this is an old lesson and we found it was too much. So we took this from the book, probably. You've got your comparatives and everything. And it was too much for the students, but maybe this is something that was taken from a book. I really can't remember.
that's elementary school.
This is year 7. This is grade 7.
Yeah.
This is grade 7. I really can't remember which lesson we would have.
It was about an earthquake, if I don't make a mistake.
No, you might be right, but no. I really can't remember. But I understand what you want to do. You want to, let's see if we can find something about it. My advice would be to start with a text, to do exactly what Ravi did, to speak about a subject, and then you can go through and you can tweak the vocabulary to make it what you want. But start with something and then work from there. Can you remember any of the vocabulary?
No, but I can check in my classes. Okay, I'll check it. I'll open my, even my, okay. Get
Too hot.
the ECB platform, I will tell you.
This one.
I'm sure that this teacher included the words that she has in the unit.
Is this one of them? Heat wave, extreme, stay indoors, advice?
No, it doesn't sound to me.
There's something about a heat wave.
No, wait a minute, I'll tell you now in a minute. I'm going into my ECB platform, way to go. I'll tell you exactly what page it was. So we have the vocabulary. It's to the rescue. And okay, it was fire on the Carmel. Okay, it wasn't an earthquake. And the words are bring back cage firefighter, follow ground immediately, let go, make sure, put out, rescue, save, smoke, spread, and worst. Okay, it was Fire on the Caramel. That's there.
Wow, I don't remember where it was.
Because I remember that I've seen the image that we have in the book, but on the other way.
Might be something, was it done specifically for one of your classes or something?
I think that it was a teacher, it's not from Speak to Go. I think you said it was a teacher who's done it.
Maybe.
But it's very weird because I remember that you had an
Fire on the
image.
Carmel, you've got it. No, you've got it.
And what about the rights?
So it would have been just done. It was a special exercise. A teacher did it.
Yeah, the teacher did it. Yeah.
A teacher did it. So here you go. Is this vocabulary from?
I don't see. It's too small.
Ah.
Okay. No, it's still small. A little bit, even with my okay, no, it's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, yeah. Makes sense.
This is from the book?
Yeah, from Way to Go.
Okay.
There you have it. If you scroll down a little bit, you will see it.
So here, text on the
second. But it's
December,
exactly the same text. It's taken from the book.
Right, so a teacher would have done this.
Yeah, but what
On
about
December
the
2nd, 2010.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think this is not something that's being used anywhere other than that particular teacher used it in that classroom, and that was it.
Yeah, but can we do something like that using the text or even the listening from the book?
I think that there is an issue of copyright. If you're going to copy, so this is something that the teacher just used as the teacher would use as a handout. It's not something. It was done as a particular exercise.
Yeah, but it's in your platform.
Yeah, but it's not available. It's not available to anybody. It's not.
Okay.
It's not something that we have access to.
Okay.
No school has. It was just used for this particular project.
Okay.
To try things. I really would steer clear of copying too much. I don't. I know it's nice to be able to take the text, but I think if you as a teacher look at the text and you look at the vocabulary and you basically, just as Ravid did, you speak your own text based on the ideas in the book. Firstly, you don't then have an issue with copyright. And secondly, what you're doing is you're broadening your students out. They're not just repeating again what they're seeing in the book. The kids don't all enjoy books. So sometimes if you have a connection with a book, it's not necessarily a positive thing. I mean, I don't know what everybody else feels about that. But I feel if you're going to take something from the book, it should be your version of that. It should be a more exciting version. It should be a version that lends itself to speech. You know, in the book, you have to introduce 30 words every unit or whatever it may be. It's exhausting for the students. But what you want them to do is you want them to actually work with a platform that allows them to manage what they're doing, to manage the speech that you're pushing them to produce. So I feel like you shouldn't be using, I'll just stop sharing. You should not be using text from the books. You use it as a spark, you know, but look at it and say, okay, what in my teaching capability, if I was going to actually write 60 words on this, what would I write? And how would I then upgrade that vocabulary so that it's something that I want to actually teach in this lesson?
Now, another question. Now, for the sake of, let's say, for the Hashtalmut, we're supposed to write a lesson. But do you think that teachers will write lessons?
Sorry, say again.
Again, for the Hashtalmut, we have to write a lesson.
Right.
But let's be practical. Do you think the teachers write their lessons?
I'm here. So the way everything works is that you've got like another exercise next week. You've got like a home study session to build up the hours. So what I will offer to do is I will be on Zoom, let's say from, you tell me which are the best 2 hours for you, and I will be available on Zoom at that time, sometime between 4 and 7, and I'll help you. Come into the meeting room and we'll write it together. You know, you'll write a few, and it's like learning anything new. Once you get a few under your belt, you're fine, you're away.
No, it's okay. It's okay. I can do this, but in real life, do you think that teachers will write their lessons, or do you think teachers will use speak-to-go lessons?
In real life, I hope teachers will write their own speak-to-go lessons and share them in a teaching community.
Okay.
I hope that you'll write something great, and Raviv will write something great, and Inat will write something great, and you'll share it all. And suddenly there'll be a community there of additional teaching resources that allow you to focus on speech.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Okay, any questions? No, you all okay? Nurit, everyone, yeah, all right.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Caroline. I just wanted maybe to ask if we could get a sample of a lesson, so we know. No.
I will. I'll share with you all a document. I'll share. Is everybody on the WhatsApp group? Okay, so I'm going to inundate you. I'll give you the presentation from Miri, but don't just write a lesson. Add resources. Make it an activity. Make it something that when you go into the classroom, you think, you know what? Today we're going to be throwing paper airplanes around, and we're going to be talking about this topic because the kids have already practiced on Speak to Go, and their English has risen a level, and they're much more comfortable speaking about this topic. Use it as a whole package to make your lessons more enjoyable for you and for the students.
Definitely, sure.
Yeah, fine. I will share everything with you. So I'll put a note on the group as well. And next week, let me know which 2 hours you'd like me available on Zoom, and I will help you write those lessons. Not a problem.
Great.
All right.
Thanks
Take care, everybody. Whoa, I'm letting you out of class early. I'm so nice. Fine. Have a great evening, everyone. Take care.
Caroline, next week we'll have a session to write this lesson.
Try and put some ideas down. And
yeah, we'll try to do it, but if we need the help, but this will be the next session, or it will be an
no, I'll send a message on the WhatsApp group, but next week you've got like a sort of home study session, but I'll be on
the asynchrony.
Exactly. So for the asynchronic, what a word, for that session, I will be on Zoom, and you can just come and go in and out of the lesson, and we'll help you write everything.
Hi, Caroline, I'm sorry I missed the part with the attendance because I was.
It's fine, not a problem. I saw your message. It's fine. Okay. I think you're there. Don't worry, no problem.
Thank you.
Great excuse though.
Yeah, as you can hear.
Yeah, I've got it. All right, everyone, have an easy evening. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you. Bye.
Shalom.